Hi guys, my name is Kevin, and today we have a guest with us. It's Ben, and he got 10th place at the last Extravaganza on Sunday, and congratulations.
Thanks.
And he wanted to show us his a little bit spicy deck profile of Virtual Worlds. I haven't seen a deck profile like this, and it's with the new cards from the last set, so I'm very happy to see it. Thanks for showing us.
Yeah, I guess we'll just go right into it. So, as every virtual world deck, we play the standard engine cards like 3 Lilu, 3 Gigi, 3 Lalo, and 3 Lily. These are the names that actually get you to play the game, and you have to run 3 of each of those. Lulu obviously being the best one, and Lalo probably being the best extender. But you have to run all of them at 3. And I think that's what every virtual world deck has in common. And then what's special for my deck, I only run a single Nyan. That's mostly due to the fact that I do not run Desires. And I think that Nyan is just a brick, basically. It's a nice extender, and it's a resource management card. It lets you shuffle back your face-on-banished cards if you need to. But since this deck doesn't run Desires, you don't have the risk of banishing either Nyan, so running one, in my opinion, is fine, as long as you can cycle your cards with the trap. You should never run out of resources. Then for hand traps, we have the Gamma package, which I think is standard in this deck. Some people have been cutting this lately, just because they think it's not worth the brick, and you need main deck space for like pots or the new trap. But I still think this is really great, and because you bait hand traps easily with your hand effects, so you have an empty field to resolve Gamma on your own turn often enough. And it's very generic, so you can even keep it against control. Then 3 Ash, and I decided to run 3 Skullmeister, because Skullmeister hits both the Tier 1 decks, Virtual World and Drytron, and Virtual World doesn't even lose to Nip right now that often, so I don't think main decking Nibiru, or actually I'm not playing Nibiru at all, is correct at all right now. So these are my 9 hand traps and the driver. Then for spells, we have 3 Kowloon. I think this is standard. It's probably your best setup and the best way to get their trap. Then I'm only running 2 Qingwang, since I'm not running Desires again. I can afford to only run 2 of the brick. Of course, sometimes it's a nice discard, but usually you don't want to see it at all. Then for generic spells, we have 3 Foolish Goods. I think this is very important. It's a starter that gets you into your place. Many people argue that it's a neg 1, since every monster, every starter also sends you the spell, so you don't need this card, but in fact it's very flexible right now with the new trap, which is a Reborn, so you don't have to always send the Qingwang, but you can also send the trap. And I think once this deck starts running and is going, you don't really care whether you have 1 Foolish Goods in your hand, and you just discard it as you go. So then we have 3 Pot of Prosperity and 2 Pot of Extravagance. So I decided to run these because it boosts consistency. Usually you used to see people run 3 Desires, or sometimes, I think with the most current LCS, we had people run 3 Desires into Extravagance or vice versa. But I think Pot of Prosperity is much better than the draw 2 cards, because this deck needs a 2-card combo to play. And anything past that, you don't really care about it. So as long as you see your 2-card combo, you're fine. And it doesn't hurt at all to banish like 3 or 6 cards of your extra deck, as long as you get to choose them. If you already have a good hand, you can still resolve this for 3. So you don't have to banish your extra deck resources at all, and you can keep all the options, especially if you're in a control matchup. Then Pot of Extravagance. I decided to run this because I used to brick a lot with the deck, and I didn't want to run all the main deck bricks anymore. And like this, I can run Nyan at 1 and Xinglong at 2. And you don't actually have to change up the extra deck a whole lot for this. So I think it's a really good, draw 2 card, obviously. And 5 pots overall, because that mathematically gives you the highest chance of opening exactly 1 going first. Going second, you can side out 1 or 2 pots, because you don't really want to see more than 1, and going second you have an additional card. Also, pots are actually weaker going second in a meta where hand traps are basically the only cards that matter going second. Then D1 E-Tally. It's a good extender, you need your targets on the field, and it's more flexible than a name that you would normal summon. And it actually helps you extend past bounces or pops on your normal summon if you don't open Kalun. And then for traps, I ran 2 Chuche. I think this is mostly standard now. When people run the new pot and the new trap, they only run 2 Chuche because you're not forced to send this with like something like Lulu. If you're targeting, let's say, a spell and you want to add a monster, you have to send a trap. But oftentimes the Desires builds, like they banish one of the traps or something, but no, with the other trap you can still resolve these effects. You still run 2 even though you run Extravagance and could like theoretically run only 1, but you want to always have the option to have 1 on field and resolve 1 in your grave. And then 1 of the new trap. This is a Reborn, but it costs you a card from hand that you send. This is fine, it lets you extend past Nibiru, and it can actually help you make different combos and lets you play around Nibiru sometimes. So this is definitely really good. The field effect doesn't really come up that often. It changes battle position of a monster. Like theoretically you can like prevent a Zeus or something against Zodiac or whatever, but I don't think it's ever come up for me yet. Then for the extra deck, something we run because of Extravagance is double Shenshin and double Juju. This is about the only change that I did to the deck ever since I implemented Extravagance. Since you need these cards for your combos, because you always want to have a target on field to combo, and sometimes you need to like synchro off or like allow to Reborn one of the materials that you synchroed off. So I think these are really mandatory to run at 2. Like theoretically, Juju, like people argue Juju doesn't come up that often, but there's actually combos where if you don't open Kowloon, you need a level 6 on board that you can target with your effects. And let's say you only ran 1 and you banish the one with Extravagance, you couldn't combo from that point and end on nothing. So I think running both of these at 2 is really good. Then double Clock Castle, this has probably become standard by now, but with Extravagance, it's especially mandatory. Then 1 Vermilion, 1 Xiaofeng. These open up combo plays, combo paths that you can take to play around Nibiru, as well as that Vermilion is very good spot removal. You can play them at 1, in my opinion, since if you really need them, you can recycle 1 with Nyan as well. And they're mostly not mandatory for your combos, as long as you don't open like really bad. Then obviously double VFD. A lot of my opponents were expecting me to play triple because I ran Extravagance, but playing 2 is actually fine because in your combos you can always resolve Nyan before you go into VFD. So you're never actually struggling. Like if you banish 1, you can still end on double VFD. If you banish both, you can still end on 1 VFD and maybe like a trap or something. So running 2 is definitely okay. And running 2 for a monster in the extra deck is correct for a monster if you want to keep exactly 1 after Extravagance, since the odds for banishing 2 are not very high and it's mostly not worth running 3 at that point. Then for Exist 3, I was running 1 Fortune Tune and 1 Gossip Shadow. I think Gossip Shadow is pretty standard. But it's arguable in this version for sure, because both Prosperity and Extravagance lock you out of drawing, so Gossip Shadow becomes useless at that point. But it's actually really good if you don't open either of the 2, or if you're in a game state where you have to threaten a Gossip Shadow. So, for example, I was playing Orcus round 3, and the guy had a Gizmek in Grave, and he was so low that I could basically attack for a game if he didn't resolve the Gizmek. And just because he knew that Virtual World plays Gossip Shadow, he had to shotgun the Gizmek as soon as I had 3 level 3s on board, because otherwise Gossip Shadow would have prevented the Gizmek. And then Fortune Tune, this is super broken against control. It just says you can't target it, and it can protect itself by detaching 1 material. Doesn't have a lot of stats, of course, but you can run into attack position monsters and then Zeus them, or you can just like ignore a whole back row of torrential tributes or whatever and Zeus your opponent. So this is really good and a really good threat against control decks. Then we have the 1 Darnet Magician. I think this is really good and really good to play, and nearly mandatory in Virtual World, since especially in combo mirrors or like game states, with the game states really simplified. Going for double Zeus is really good and helps you to control the game if you can't end on VFD in a turn, since you cannot always establish Chuche, especially in the grind game. It's really hard if you don't resolve Lulu, and not every deck cares about Shenshin Pass. So yeah, that's the Downward, and then the one Zeus, obviously. I don't think there's much to say. It's a good interaction, helps you clear boards, and then the one Conzero Ptolemy M7. This helps you loop hand traps. This helps you to spot remove things like big nip tokens, whatever monster you can target, like Golden Lords, for example, that cannot be destroyed. Yeah, and I think it's really good. The only thing in the extra deck that one could have like maybe played was Paraton, the Hyperiton, the new rank 9, but I couldn't get one in time, and I felt like in an Extravaganza extra deck, I didn't really have the space to play it, since all my Synchro 9s were in the deck to help me combo consistently, and my Xyz monsters help me clear boards and play through stuff. The Zeus package, for example. So I felt like Hyperion wasn't really worth it, and as long as we can still play VFD and there's no ban list, I think VFD is just the best boss monster to end on. The other thing would be like a Dragoon out, like Utopia Beyond, but I wasn't expecting that many Dragoon decks.
Okay, so you're like you build your deck like to focus on two different aspects of your extra deck. So one going first for the VFD and one going second into like a safe Zeus. So you go like into a simplified game set and then just outgrind them with your combos. So
yeah, that's basically it, because I think this deck struggles a bit against control. So I think running stuff like Fortune Tune and then forcing a Zeus is basically your best bet on blessing against them and getting up in the resource game. And then for synchros, I focused on stuff that helps me achieve my end board. Since I don't really think there's a lot of good synchros that remove a board, and every time you're using two monsters for a synchro, as long as that synchro doesn't remove two cards, you're not plussing off of it. So I think synchros are like weird going second. Obviously Juju is a good one. If you can get his protection life, it's actually pressuring a lot, especially in the late game against control decks. But it's really hard to make from scratch. If you have nothing on board and no graveyard setup, you mostly cannot make a protected Juju. Then one thing that I'm running different than other Virtual World decks is I'm not running the draw synchros. So I'm not running Stardust Charge Warrior, I'm not running Coral Dragon, I'm not running Croco. That's partly to the fact that Extravagance and Prosperity both lock me out of drawing, so they're no value in my going first turn if I open any pot, which is well, my deck is built like I play 5 pots to open exactly one every time, so I think it would be bad to like build my extra deck for the exact opposite. Also, I think in general they're not really needed. I think it's better to have more Xyz monsters, more options in your extra deck to play against control decks and to play against decks that simplify the game state and keep the other space to combo effectively, have every combo piece you need, and always be able to end on your end board. And Stardust Charge, for example, it does the same as Juju. Like Juju is for your combo, it's a better Stardust Charge because you can also target it for your effects. Yes, you don't get the draw, but unless that draw is like exactly Lalo, it almost never helps you. Except for like maybe a resource game if you're like in a grind game and need the discard or whatever. But I think for Extravagance this is definitely correct. Don't run the draw synchros. Then for my side deck, since my main deck was mainly soft hand traps, so Gamma, Ash, and Skullmeister, I had to run something like Drytron, which is 3 draw, 3 cycle reader. I think these are by now mandatory in side decks. Like some control decks don't want to run draw because control decks are about resource management, but I think in a combo deck you have to absolutely run both of them. Since Drytron otherwise just FTKs you. Same with Virtual World. Like in both control mirrors, you need the absolute maximum amount of power hand traps. So I ran 6 against Rytron. And I can keep in all of the 9 main hand traps against Rytron too. Then I have 3 Lancia, same reason. Power hand trap against Virtual World, wins you the mirror, most likely, unless they open like insane. And then 2 Ghost Spell, because I felt like it's the next best soft hand trap against the mirror. And there's also an application against Rytron, like you can play this against Rytron. So technically I can also side on the 2 Ghost Spells and have 8 cards to side against Rytron. And then for going first, I have a single Cult by the Grave. It's just a good card, prevents Lancia, you need to see it. Like Lancia just kills you otherwise. So you keep in the Gammas post-siding even going first, and you run Cult by the Grave just to counter Lancia, because especially with the 5 pots, like Lancia just kills you. And then 3 back row removal. This might look weird, but Reboot is just the best back row removal, Feather Dust is the second best back row removal, and then I wanted to run a third one, and that's just a singular Storm. So people would probably run intuitively run more Storms, just because they think, okay, the card's at 3, why aren't you running 3? And that's because I want to run 3 back row removals, exactly. And just because the other ones are at 1 doesn't mean I have to run Lightning Storm at more. So these are my 3 back row removals. And yeah, that's my side deck.
Okay, yeah, thanks for showing us. I really like the idea of putting a simplified game state, and yeah, I really enjoyed your explanation of every card you used. I was like not shocked, but I don't know the exact word, but it was very astonishing. So thanks a lot. Maybe I can ask you if you have like some memorable like plays against some decks in the tournament, or maybe you say like how the or if the pots worked great, or if they're like mediocre.
I think the pots were really great. I think seeing the prosperity is especially insane, since going first, you can always pick the missing piece to your combo. Like, if you look at your hand and you don't have a name, you can pick a name. If you want to see Kowloon, you can pick Kowloon. And going second, especially against control, like obviously against combo, you need to hand trip them or you lose, like pot or not pot. But against control, these are actually insane. Like, they have to negate this, or they risk you revealing a Reboot, revealing a Lightning Storm, revealing Feather Dust, and they just die, right? So prosperity is really insane. Some people were saying it's overhyped, you don't really need to play it. I don't feel that way. I think it's one of the best cards to be released so far. I guess like the argument is there though that Virtual is not the best singular deck to play this card, but I think this card is so generic that almost every deck can play it right now. Since you don't have to go for 6 even, it doesn't banish randomly. So just choose 3 and Duality, and you can still special summon freely. Like, why not? My matchups for the tournament, by the way, were round 1. I played against Striker Eldritch. Striker Eldritch, like, it has been around a bit, but it's obviously not a tier 1 strategy right now. He didn't open very well, and I think, yeah, it was pretty manageable. Like, game 1, he pretty much only opened with a Conquistador pop. I could play through that with Kowloon. So that matchup was okay-ish. Then I played against Zodiac Eldritch. My opponent wasn't really confident with the deck. He made a few misplays, but managed to win game 2 because because I didn't open a spell or anything. Like, I opened 5 monsters, and he had Trident, so you cannot play through that if you don't open Teleport, a spell or something. Game round 3 was against Orcust. The guy was playing Trap Orcust with like Torrential Tribute, Crackdown, and whatever. He bricked pretty badly. Well, I had Ash twice and like ended his turn. So that was like a bit of a grind game, but not too bad. He hand tripped me a few times, but he never really got into the engine.
Okay.
Round 4, was I don't know, what did I play? Well, I played like my two losses the tournament were Virtual Mirror and Drytron. So basically just lost die roll.
Yeah.
They hand tripped me or whatever. Like it was like one of them I lost die roll. Didn't see any hand trips. The other one, he drew double hand trip in game 3, the Drytron player. So there's nothing to do there. Other than that, I think the deck performed very well. I think I would definitely keep running it like this. I think you can always switch up hand trips and whatever. But I think that like I was looking for a build of this deck that allowed me to run 3 Prosperity on top of other draw pots and still keep 9 hand trips. Because I think that that's the strength of the deck, that you can actually play a combo deck and still run 9 hand trips.
Yeah, that's definitely a strength. And maybe for the last question, what were your, or what would you have banned for Prosperity from your extra deck? Like, will you go for 6 or for 3? And
if you go for 3, like the first thing you banish is Gossip Shadow because you can't use it. Under Prosperity, then you banish one of the Jujus, one of the Shenshens. These 3 are like the obvious first 3 banishes.
Yeah, okay.
If you only go for 3. And then if you go for 6, you have to like kind of decide. You usually want to keep both VFD. You can banish Xiaofeng because depending on your hand, like Xiaofeng only comes up in some place to play around Nibiru. So Xiaofeng I think is a really valuable card, but if your hand doesn't require you to use Xiaofeng, I think that's one of the first ones you can banish. And then you can banish Downward Magician, because if you go first, you're not aiming at a simplified game state.
Yep.
You definitely want to end the game right there. And as your last card, you can either choose M7, but honestly, M7 is like a card that helps you grind sometimes. You can even choose the second Juju, because second Juju only comes up against control, and like if you go blind game 1, I would probably banish the M7, the Juju, and keep the M7 because M7 can loop your hand trips or whatever if you need to, or like give you resource management, even if they manage to simplify the game state somehow. Juju is like cool to remove stuff against Eldritch, so you want to keep it against that. But yeah, these 3 are free to banish, and then for the other 3, you pick and choose depending on your situation.
Yeah, okay.
Like,
Yeah,
if you
depends on your
cannot,
hand.
if you cannot end on double VFD, it's also fine to banish one. And like most likely, you even banish Nyan in the combo. So if you combo, you shuffle back any one of these, so you only end up with 5 banishes.
Okay. Thank you very much for showing us the deck profile, like I already said. And I hope you do well in the future too. And maybe we'll see you in the future on this channel again.
Yeah, thanks.